Hersto-rhetoric, nah. So today, for Oshun deity, I sense her armor, embody beauty, dignity, enrobe her peacock aura, incarnate her. Soul deep, yes, I hear her calling. I answer, yes, singieza, simia. On waking, dewdrops open gifted sights. The rising, a gifting, sweet soul gifting, most precious, most fecunditas. Each day I rise, each precious moment watching. Being in, yet watching, immersed in sanctuary, held sata in rising. For each day bodes well, for life anew, life renewed, life new birthing. Life new birthing. For she comes, coquette, this be the first blush. Gliding her smile belies voyages long, rancid her testimony. Oh, bird of broken wing, recovered like phoenix, she be rising. Advance sidestep this, reveal no wanton move, no sly side wine. Oh, she comes raining, Sata, she be sensing horizons blue inviting. Like phoenix she comes rising. Imbibing sweet honey, stirring fecundity rocks. She sups aria dreams, she threads love beams, she notions belonging, shoreline sensing anchor. She, molten ashes tumbling, rises like phoenix, possibility cascading. Soft frissons take she fluttering on water's edge. Can I truly offer me? Less expecting secret wounds be seen, exposing inner prima materia, sinew channels to soul chamber. I tread tenderly, newborn naked, holding sweet sensory, celestial reverie, tenderly crafted under moonlit shards. Magically traced through dream flight, gilded offerings to encounter beloved. To encounter beloved as enlivened being. vitally invested deep within. Be akin feeling like dancing over hot coals soon. Jumping river deep in your gifting. For foibles, no, them no worry me. Them be stitched creeds honoring fidelity to life's tapestry. For less such topology, I be thirsting. Wanting emotion, red relief for foibles strengthen footholds on earth walks to eternity. Foibles make we human. Make for sweet meanders through love's poppy fields to veritable embrace. Oh yes, I believe. Oh yes, I believe. I believe I can truly, oh yes, offer all of me. Incense smokes, heat, belly rise, music, rapper, striptease. Ha! Woo! Oh, how sweet it is. Huh? How sweet it is. A rising incantation. As moon sets, dawn breaks, in sight, new day unfolding. How sweet she be. Moments blossoming, dream states to earth plane being. Now to capture joy break essence, to hold her, to carry her front and center, just, oh, blossoming. That cherished wanderer be the gauntlet, be the clarion, be the imbibing, for she on waking, she be present, it be palpable, romancing, oh. For footsteps to virgin territories call for all-day vigilantes, all-day eagle vision, all-day 2020, inner molding to undulating, say, oh. Life, river beings, oh, how sweet she be the dawning. Cherished moments ode to the calling, oh, how. How sweet it is. Waist bead serenades, for it requires a certain gait. To carry dignity intended to carry femininity, rolling waves into honey ravines across curved, wasted, and hips. All roads lead, they say, it is in the curl of your lips. Initiate the swing of your hips and may say, show them, girl, show them. Roll those hips in that certain gait. Beat songs crafted through color, style, and chink, generations invested from she to she. Sweet fecundity is your prerogative. To be all woman may say, show them, girls, show them. For as you walk and whine it, you walk and whine it, walk and whine it, feel the power of your being. From single chink to cascade harmonies, beaded waist and churning hips, for it takes a certain feline gait. Celebrate your rolling hills. Carry your serenade, there's no space for bashful promenade. This place is yours, Miss, claim it. Work it, girl, 'cause you hold the power, it only takes one chink. Arrested, you have them. Alert, ready, you fat. Pretty hot and tempting, you hold the reins, 'cause it's sweet like that, miss say, oh, fade to black. Yes, Baba. Venus sensates. Celebrate your Venus sensates. her, hold her, hold her as you walk. Express her in your talk. Hold her in your gaze. For she is yours to behold. Offer her to the world. They are waiting, they are wanting. Goddess, this is no time to jest. Come, make manifest. Hold her bosom close. Take stride. Unfurl your Venus sensates. For she loves you well. She loves you well. This cabinet of curiosities, what to call it? Belly, stomach, midriff. Detached colonies, disembodied, gaily colored flowers adorn this cabinet of curiosities. In tempo-laced heart rhythm, she rises, she falls, she rises, she falls. In tempo-placed soul schism, she rises, she falls. Confidant, sentinel holds Venus gates, 'cause she rises and she falls. Sweet melody, ragged rhythm, divine bejeweled sensorium, she rises and she falls. She, no, forsake we. This cabinet of curiosities, breathe deeply, exhale, embrace she. Belly, stomach, that cavity, she your belly. Stomach, sweet sanctuary, the enigmatic cabinet of curiosities. Mobile museum, she holds verity, enrobed she comes, folded, fleshy mind she comes, etched, fiercely feminine, rounded, soft folds, stretched. Mama warrior patina, tendrils archiving, 9 months, incubating life form, so blessed. She, mobile sanctuary, holds verity. Enrobed she comes, folded, fleshy, sensually embracing me. Hersto-rhetoric. Now so today, flower me free. The call to the flowering is a beauteous thing, not to censor, just to sense her, deeply evolving in the flowering. A call to encounter, disarm her. A call to rest, nest on petal bed, find release in the weave of new narratives, threading matriarch suggests. Woman siren in velvet red, beheld in delicate laced caress. Enter cocoon called desire. Dismantle ancient imagery, ignite picto-emotional memory, evoke a vision fictioned as reverie. Evoke desire, may say hold and receive, hold and receive. Desire, a key color in the tapestry of free. Desire, desirous, I come to me, I flower me free. Poised, open, released, I as rose petals unfurling, suspended in slow reveal. Enticed in the free flow, in the flowering essence of me. Like circling honeybees diving for the honeypot, silver-tongued with lyrics and jest, they seek to possess me. Reflections of the flowering in me, for this is no flattery. For as I flower me free, desiring and being desired is a constant state of me. Poised in flowering mode, blossom sweet, sanctified, I emerge at will. Volition to pursue desire, pursue the fire, activate that which lies core central in sinew. Nurture or nature, the long-held debate. I sit, I observe, I sensate. For those women, they run with the wolves, smile in their knowing. They know their fortune wrapped around treasure troves. Fecundity, fecundity, fecundity wrapped in simile. The ability to craft the notion of free. Stories of the flowering, the blossoming to free. Liberation, no. Hardened acts of protest, no pistol whipping, shapes and thighs. This liberty, so often self-denied, is a call to dwell in self. To behold, yes, to be held, desiring and being desired is a constant state of me. I simply be flower, me, freed. For the matriarchs, them say, me say, the matriarchs, them say, keep the fire burning. For smoldering embers, they signal danger. Me say, keep the fire burning. The matriarchs, them say, me say the matriarchs, them say, keep the fire burning. Hersto-rhetoric, not so today, 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 not so today. Hersto-rhetoric. Hersto-rhetoric. Hersto-rhetoric, nah, so today.
Thank you all again for coming to this slightly alternative installment of the Great Writers Inspire at Home series. I think it's safe to say that the St. Luke's Chapel hasn't seen or experienced something quite like a performance of yours, Dianne. Thank you very much for coming and sharing with us.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, why we invited Dianne to come and join our series, along with more sort of traditional, bound book writing authors, is that literature is varied and vast, and the ways that we engage with poetry in this case might be very different if we're sitting alone at home reading a book, reading a poem printed on a page, or if we're in a venue like this with other people sitting in a circle listening to somebody performing. So I think my first question to you, Dianne, is how do you see the relationship between the text of your poems and the performance? What does it mean to perform the poems? Are they alive in performance, or are they alive on the page, or are they different kinds of lives?
First, I'd like to say good evening to everyone. Thank you. Thank you for your audience. It was a pleasure to perform for you. The question, just break it down for me again, please.
Okay, the relationship between the text of your poems and the performance of the poems.
Right. When I see my poetry written, or even when it's coming to me, it's usually it just comes out like this, line after line. I may be moved by an emotion, a question that I'm asking myself, maybe something I just wake up with. Often I'll wake up and literally poems will just come out. And I know that I will read it and experience the poem one way. So I have a poem, for example, which I didn't perform tonight, called Piecing Peace. So piecing as in pieces, and peace as in peace, P-E-A-C-E. Now if you were to just hear that, you may interpret that differently. So there's definitely a difference between reading it and even hearing it, I think, because obviously when you're hearing it, say you weren't seeing me physically, you would hear intonation, you'd hear energy, and every time I perform them, they're different, depending on the context. It was really hot in here today. It was a very warm atmosphere. The relationship between the poems and performing them, for me, brings another dimension of physicality, of enlivenment. It enables me the opportunity to, the process, if I can describe it, is I really internalize what it is that I'm feeling, and I move from the emotion, and that then informs my movement. This particular piece is, again, quite different because I might generally recite, and my movements are always within my recitals. That's just how I perform. Working with these sculptures brought in another dimension again, because there was a relationship between what these sculptures represent. So without wishing to preempt what you may be asking next, just to add another layer, when you have objects, the piece that I had around my head, and the drum as well. We made a choice just to use a singular drum. That in itself is a language, and there's a rapport between the music, the way in which I drop my movements, and the words, and the sense which I'm trying to convey. So it becomes quite a complex interrelationship, and quite a dynamic one that I see, if I had to look at an image, would move like this. But for me, if I was to say in one word, what would that be? For me, it's about enrichment. It enriches the offering.
And the poems are the offering.
Yes. Well, for me, the entire thing is the offering. Yeah. Yes. From the minute you step in, that's the offering. Yes.
Absolutely. You did preempt, because I was going to ask you about the sculptures, and then I was going to ask you about the percussion as well, but I think that you've summed all that up. So then another aspect of performance, I guess, is the presence of an audience.
Yes.
So what in your mind is the role of the audience in the work, in this kind of setting?
The title of this work is Hersto-rhetoric Na So Today. So Na So Today, in West Africa you will hear it, in English-speaking West African countries you'll hear it. It's a patois, it's kind of slang, which seeks for an affirmation of something that maybe we're experiencing or we've witnessed. So it's a call to bear witness. That for me is why I put Na So Today on the end of that. And for me, that's the relationship with the audience, is to bear witness, but at the same time, you know, I sense energy coming from people. In some performances, which are very intimate, could be a very different setting. When it's dark, you know, the daylight makes a difference. Sometimes I really come very close and really get into your personal space if I feel that that intimacy, that level of intimacy is what the offering requires. For me, the audience are a really integral part of live performance. And as an artist, I know I describe myself as a multi-sensory artist. I like to work on different levels. If I was able to burn incense in here, we would have had incense burning. You know, the olfactory for me is very important. The audience for me provides another canvas on which I can recreate the offering. And for me as an artist, as a writer, whether I'm painting, whether it's a poem that I'm offering, I believe the act of creation is not complete until I'm able to engage with an audience, you know, and it's such a beautiful thing to have a setting like this where, you know, we're able to engage, hopefully at some point later on today, but to also have feedback and enter into some kind of dialogue around the piece. What I'm presenting are provocations. It's food for thought, you know, it's, for me, some kind of reverie on some level, and to come out of dream space and to bring it to human beings who have beating hearts, you know, and emotions, and I can read faces and I can sense energy as I'm performing. Takes it into another dimension. Again, it's enrichment.
So what you're suggesting is that, well, let me rephrase that. Just to probe you on this, how much do you have a potential audience in mind as you're creating, as you're rehearsing, as you're sort of workshopping these pieces?
I was conscious in this piece that my poetry is quite dense in the imagery that I use, just in one verse, you know, there's a lot going on. And so I created this space as a kind of opportunity for exhale, just to kind of like ease back a little, although there were still things going on. You know, there was a lot to process. And I was very conscious as I was choreographing this piece, and also the rhythms with the drums, my own body movements, some of which are improvised. You know, my practice is to always leave space for improvisation. I always want to be able to have that space to just flow and jump if I want to jump. Yeah. So I'm very conscious when I'm crafting a piece that is to be performed. When I write, however, the fidelity to the inspiration for me is paramount and primordial. So I will never censor what comes. As an artist, again, painting for me is similar. I will offer what comes, because for me it's soul deep, it's a relationship between my soul and myself as a vessel to bring this offering to the world. And so I do not feel it's necessary to censor. Sometimes I'll read back and I might think, oh, and sometimes words come and they don't make sense to me in the time, but I've just decided when it comes, I write it down, and I have to trust that that is what it's supposed to be.
Okay. Well, I mean, I could ask you many more questions, but I'd like to open it up to the audience now. Please, do you have any questions for Dianne about her process, about the performance?
Because this is such a difficult auditory space, there's so much that gets lost up here. I'm going to be annoying and ask you to speak into a mic, please.
Hi, thank you, Diane. I was really looking forward to seeing you, and I finally was able.
Thank you.
I wanted to ask about the roses. I thought that added such an amazing dimension to the experience, and especially because of what roses do physiologically, and just the idea of this whole olfactory dimension that one doesn't get with the great majority of performances. That was wonderful.
I'm glad you enjoyed it. Your question? You asked me why did I select the roses? Yeah. I work with roses, and particularly dead roses. I do collages with rose petals, and I'm always struck by the tenacity of the leaves. These are crushed rose petals. When I work, let's say, doing collage, and I'm working with glue, so you've got a rose petal that has dried. So I will always dry rose, but I love roses, just as general, so I'll always dry them, and that in itself is quite a ritualistic process. I'm a very ritualistic artist, and person, just in myself. And for me, working with rose petals began as a soliloquy on fragility. And this idea that, yes, you may cut the rose from the garden or buy it, fresh cut roses. They will last for a week or however long they last, and then what happens? And it, to me, speaks of the resilience of womanhood, the core themes that I embrace in my work, and what I'm presenting in this work, Hersto-rhetoric, exploring her story somehow fragmented, from the rhetoric, the grand narratives that encircle us. The roses, for me, present, and you will have heard in the poetry as well, this soft, fragile, yet resilient space. My work is characterized by what I call the 3 C's: communion, connection, and co-creation. So for me, for those who did receive the rose petals in their hand, it was for me an opportunity to connect with you and not perform to you, but to bring you into this space so that you also bear witness and you're part of this co-creation. That was the inspiration for me. Thank you.
Do you have another question?
Hi, thank you. That was really so not anything I've done before.
Thank you so much.
There's a lot of artistic layers here. Do the words always come first, or do you sometimes, look at the sculpture and think of, words that work with the sculpture, or the music? Does the music sometimes come first? Is there a pattern, or?
No specific order. It's about flow for me. Life is about flow. So you'll see there are never any straight lines in anything that I do. It's about flow. Often with the poetry, my rising moments are the most potent for me, and that's generally when I get my flow of poetry. This particular series of sculptures came from a residency that I did in Dakar, Senegal, almost 3 years ago now. And we were exploring women, la femme libre, the free, the liberated woman, in the context of women, migration and development. That's what the core theme of the residency was. And it was through dialogue with other artists. So the whole idea is that we'd have these conversations as we were working. Everybody had their own particular artistic form. So I was working with another sculptor who works with iron and metal, for example. And we'd wake up at whatever time, artists, 10 o'clock, midday, we'd work through the night, and we'd just start these conversations, which would go on for days. And definitely the notes or my contribution or the responses through those dialogues informed these pieces. Or I might offer a poem, and then we start that way. So as I say, there's no strict 1, 2, 3. It's all about flow for me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. That was wonderful.
Thank you.
I've got a lot of questions which won't formulate themselves very easily, but I'll just follow on from that one. I get the point about flow, but there's a point where, you know, your drum playing and the performance have to be put together in some sense. Do you read the text first and then think this is the way to do it, or, you know, or do
you want to answer that?
Because they are very beautifully fitted together. So if that happens by serendipity, by, you know, feeling, as it were, that's a very beautiful thing. But it's a very beautiful thing anyway, and maybe you had done some routines first and worked out how to do it.
Thank you for that. We're grateful that you enjoyed it. Well, it's a relationship between the two of us. We all come from similar backgrounds, and when I first had to read the poems, the way the music was constructed was that I asked her to read the poems, and then, here comes the word again, I went with the flow of what the poems were about, and then I get the inspiration to put the drum beat together, and then we test it out to see whether it actually works with it. We spent copious amount of hours to produce this, you know, and there's all sorts of various things going on. I mean, there's things that could have been, you know, sort of like included in, but just time did not permit for that to happen. So what we do is when we get together, she, you know, I ask her to read me the poems, and sometimes I go back and listen to it back, and then I get inspired to put a beat, the drum beat, together, and then we test it out to see how it works together.
Thank you. Within that, though, there's still, as I said earlier, the space for improvisation. And yeah, so again, for me, it's flow. Yeah, thank you.
I have another question.
Go for it.
Tell me about your language use in your poetry. Tell me what not the meaning of the patois, but using patois, what does that mean for you in your poetry? What does that do?
So when I say, me say the matriarchs them say. Any offers? What is that? How do you read that? What does it mean for you? I won't ask my mum who's sitting there because she knows. The matriarchs them say. So what does it mean for me? Patois is part of my makeup. When people ask me where I'm from, being the poet that I am, this is how I respond. I say, I am of Caribbean parentage, of African heritage, and the skin that I am gifted in is offered to you as the urban indigene. So for me, that's what it boils down to. Patois, by its very nature, my interpretation is it's some kind of mashup, some kind of melange. So my mother is of Jamaican origin, my father is of Vincentian origin. I've spent most of my life in Africa in different parts. So it's a real melange going on. I never set out to write a poem in patois, but there's some times when the flow, the emphasis for me is communicated more strongly with a patois expression. There are also words that I make up, like Hersto-rhetoric. You know, it just came to me, I was like, actually, yes, that's it. And when I say the skin that I am gifted in, I see it as a real gifting, because a lot of these questions are also about identity, you know, and transnational identity, expression, living in diaspora spaces, and in fact, the reason why it's such a pleasure, thank you Elika and Erica for including me in this project, is that we're exploring British writing. So for me, that was a bit of a, ooh, okay. Is my writing British? For a long time in my life, I rejected that notion that I could be a British writer, but evidently, it's a part of me. And so the reason why I constructed the poem to respond to anybody who asked me where I was from, so if I said I'm born in Oxford, which I was, you know, when people ask that question, it means so many things, but it became quite a sore point for me at some point in my life, because I found that people just wanted to catch me, oh, you're born in Oxford, okay, good. And I just did not tell my story at all. So this question of indigeneity, and the fact that I believe, you know, we all have the opportunity to co-construct this sense of what it means to belong, to be indigenous, to be a part of a society culturally, through my cultural expression, is really a core part of my offering, whatever my work. I had to come to a place in my own life. I always work from an embodied space, you know, my own experiences. I had to come to a point in my own life where my cultural expression, I had to put front and center. So as opposed to wanting to assimilate to, I had to just accept and recognize and actually embrace. When I was able to embrace it and say, you are this melange of all these different cultures, I saw it as a gifting. And that is how I offer, you know, everything from head to toe that I am, and wherever I am able to present my works and share them as offerings for that conversation to happen, you know, because in this world where the other seems to be such a pertinent discussion and is causing so much strife and war and pain today, this question of the other, I believe is such a rich tapestry that we can all contribute to and be part of. So a core part of my offering, whatever it is to say, come, let's weave together. You bring yours, I bring mine, and let's see what things we can create. And it doesn't always have to be beautiful. I mean, I dwell in beauty, that's true. It's very difficult for me to write poems about pain and torture. That's just not the place I sit in. If it comes, fair enough, but to date, that's just not the space I dwell in. You know, I see myself as a dreamer. I see myself as a realist. It's not a utopian situation for me at all. I have seen and I've experienced that when I bring the core of myself forwards, generally I can find connection with others on some level, in some way. And from there we can build.
Do we have any more questions?
I'm very curious about your sculptures. They're so symbolic, I find, and I have my own imaginations and things they could be, which probably all of us have in a way and have different ideas. But could you say a bit more about that, or do you want that to remain?
You're asking artists a very sensitive question to explain their work. I'd be interested to hear maybe how you're receiving them. What is your imagination around these?
Well, I've just recently been to New Zealand, and there's a stretch on a beach in New Zealand where you have stones in this form, and moriaki, they're called the moriaki boulders, and they are a bit bigger than this. And in the Maori myth, there were baskets, so baskets that the first fleet, or not the first fleet, the Maori who first came to New Zealand brought. So I was thinking of baskets. You were talking about gifts, exchanges of things. But it's also, I like the round form, but also that it's unfinished in a way. I love the colors.
Thank you.
Does anyone else want to respond to the...
I'd love to hear some others.
I wasn't sure I was hearing you quite well, so I might be repeating what you said. But to me, they symbolize birth because of those creatures that are, I assume, crawling out of the cracked egg.
Wow, beautiful. Thank you.
I was thinking myself of seeds, of the coconut. You know, it floats great distances over the ocean and then germinates its plants on distant shores.
Mm.
Yeah, no, I was thinking something very similar about the eggs, but also kind of in a sort of process of growth. You've got these things coming up, and you kept talking about fecundity and fertility, and I really liked that.
Thank you.
Anyone else want to go with the...
No, Terence has a... You're reading it?
Okay, I just wanted to say that for me the husks and fruit, you know, we talked about fruit, seeds, but they're both ends of that cycle really. And when you put one on your head, it became a kind of skull or helmet and a sign of an imperial sign, Empress. You know. So you can do a lot of things with that shape. It's very fluid, and I think fluidity as well as flow is part of the way you work, isn't it?
Absolutely.
And so you take a defined shape that has some possibilities, but not infinite possibilities, and then you flow with that.
I love this. See, this is the beauty of having this kind of dialogue space. I often, as a consumer, let's say I go to, excuse me, let's say I go to the theatre, etc., I often want to speak with the person who wrote the play or some of the actors, etc. So it's a really beautiful space, you know, that's being created, and it's lovely. Always wonderful to be able to hear how people receive the work. I intentionally presented these as unfinished works, and I could equally decide that they are finished, you know. But for me, I created them as unfinished works because I see this as a journey. So 3 years ago, I created these. I haven't done too much with them. I've since that time, some of them have had some additional wire pieces put on the edges, for example, here. They all have themes. There are 7 themes. I work with numbers, so I work with 7. And generally, I work with 1, 3, or 7 with everything that I do for various reasons. They each have a theme. I want to leave your images in your imagination and let it unfold in your subconscious as you leave here. But I'll just say that the inspiration for this collection is part of a bigger work called the Venus Sensorium. And this is where I'm exploring, it's a 5-year exploration for me, where I'm exploring love as a spiritual practice. And so this is one movement in that work. I'm just thinking how much more I should say. I was inspired to come to this work when I heard how many women, I was watching some program randomly, very late, many years ago. It was a program on fashion. And I think it was Gok, this fashion somebody. I was living in South Africa. Yes, yeah. I was living in South Africa at the time, and I had BBC something on or whatever. And there was a time when he goes on the street and he interviews people. So there were all these vox pops, and he was asking women which part of themselves they disliked the most. And it shocked me when every person, every woman who was speaking to women said, "My stomach." Every single one of them. And I found it traumatizing. This was every woman, every shape, every size you can imagine. Everyone said, "Oh, I hate my stomach." And they were using such extreme language. And that inspired me at that point to explore, what is this? How could we be so, in a collective sense, so dislocated and so cut off from our center of creation? Our fecundity. And that really sparked off, that had to be more than 5 years ago, I'd say close to 10. And that sparked off this idea of love as a spiritual practice and, my focus on women and explorations of a reshaping, a reimagining. That's what I'm proposing here. Can we reimagine ourselves within the narrative and maybe external to the narrative, as we gaze at the grand narratives of what it is to be a woman. This is also interlinked with my work as a healer. You know, I spent many years in different parts of Africa. It was almost like an initiation process where I sat with grandmothers, I sat with women in villages, in communities who are tasked with cultivating a sense of femininity amongst girl children through rites of passage. And so a lot of my work is also concerning rites of passage. And they would always speak to me about this innate power that sits within women and men. And it was such a different perspective. It thrilled me. It opened up this fecundity river for me, you know, and I've flowed in it ever since. And, you know, I really see myself as an emissary to bring this kind of work forward and this narrative. So I won't explain exactly what each piece means, and this work is still unfolding. So I aim to take this to a residency again and really spend a month just working on it. And everything that I'm hearing from you and other audiences where I will share this work, I'll put back into it. So again, it's this constant process, you know, beginning and the end, as you spoke about, yes, that they will never finish. Maybe they will, but for me, from now, I was really interested in leaving them not quite pristinely finished. For me, it's not ever going to be a pristine, finished work, but they may be mounted differently the next time you see them, you know. We'll see where we flow.
Can I just say, you haven't said anything about the wearable art. Sorry, the in the middle, the wearable art. Yeah.
So I'm going to ask the same question again.
Are you purposefully avoiding talking about that, or is it?
I'm an abstract artist, as you may have seen. I'm a conceptual artist. How did you read it? What did it symbolize for you?
Well, the obvious thing to me was an umbilical cord, but that was sort of as far as I got with it.
Yeah, I think for me it's that. It was like, it's between an umbilical cord and a skin almost that you shed. So there are times when it's a skin, but the core of it is an umbilical cord, yes, indeed.
I understood it as a snake, and I saw in it a snake charmer, or using it as snake charmer.
I love that. I love that. Serpents are very present in my work, you know? Yes.
Oh, it's definitely a choice, surely, that it's, I'm not sure what the material is, but it's elasticated in some way so that it has some sort of inner tension. It's not flopping down flat on the ground now, but it's...
So you said it's definitely here?
There's inner tension in the robe, as we can see
Yes.
from the way that it's coiled now.
And how did you read it? What was it for you?
I'm not sure, but that's definitely, I think, probably key to its dynamic within the dance. That it has that property.
Oh, thank you. Mm-hmm.
Can I just say, I think these are extensions of your body as you perform. It's not you and some objects. They become the instruments by which your body expresses itself, and thus they participate in your body. So snake or umbilical cord is fine, but don't let's pin it down to that, because it's
Exactly.
something you do with your body and with the world, right?
Absolutely. You've got it in one. And I think that is the opportunity for all of us, you know, to this kind of corporate expression. It's very key in my work. But to really bring ourselves front and center to questions we're pondering or situations we're encountering, you know, really bringing ourselves and placing ourselves front and center into whatever it is we're exploring. I feel that the kind of like peering in at the edge, you know, for me, there's a time when I actually look into them because they all represent different worlds and they all have their own story. So there, you know, there's a possibility, and they all have a series of poems for each one as well. I didn't choose one per poem, you know, which would have been quite a didactic approach to it, which is not how I work. But I feel that, you know, we're in a time where there is a requirement, there is a responsibility, I feel, for us to really stand front and center with what we believe, you know, a really deep conviction. So that's also part of the invitation here.
You know, we've been working together for about a year now. And when you talk about the matriarchs, for me, that's the part that is sort of most poignant with regards to the whole work, because that's one of the things, the stories you told me of when you went around the world, especially in Africa, and you sat with the matriarchs, and it's like the handing down of, you know, generational characteristics and attributes that are taught that doesn't exist in today's society, which I believe is missing. Can you sort of like expand a little bit on that?
On why I work with matriarchal?
Yeah, because I don't know if people realize, but the last part was when the matriarchs, you know, that very symbolic part of it, I understand it, but I don't want to like give much away. But I feel it's quite important for people to leave here understanding, because that is the history of how this came about.
Labajen in Mandinka culture, stretching across Mali, Senegal, Guinea, is, you know, a core inspiration for this. So this sculpture piece, when I was creating it, and you know, they work inside as well. They also have, madam, places, you know, and things happening inside, and also almost peepholes. But I really saw this as a crown, and this is part of the teachings. Step into your power, step into your greatness, wear your crown. These are threads of some of the poems that I was reading for you. For me, the matriarchal wisdom, the African perspectives that I was so blessed and privileged to be initiated into, trained in, and at some point to accept as part of my work. I see myself as a matriarchal emissary, you know, to bring this, because I see how powerful these perspectives are. And it's not that they're missing, I feel, well, it's not that they are something that we don't know. Perspectives, you know, the goddess, wear your crown, queen, you know, is a very popular thing right now, is out there in the world, it's out there in literature. The opportunity to explore my innate feminine power through rites of passage is what the Bajen teach. And the inspiration for me to always recall the matriarchs comes from something that I shared with you in the very beginning, Rev J, which was no matter where I was sitting, whether it be in Ethiopia, in Senegal, I sat in southern Africa, different parts of southern Africa, I'd literally be at the grandmother's knees, literally sitting, and they would always say, very early on in the conversation, because often I would have asked somebody to find this grandmother or this, you know, these women who I later, for me, it was important to elevate their status to matriarchs. They don't carry official titles. They're known as the aunties in the village. Oh, Johnny or, you know, Josephine is coming to puberty, time to take her to the aunties so that she can tell them about menstruation. And, you know, it's the kind of role that the aunties play in the village and the community. And they would always say, my child, thank you for remembering us. There's definitely this sense of, one, a secret society, you know, a lot of, not that it was secret, you could go in there, you know, men also had their own initiation processes, but the sense of it being lost, the sense of this is a dwindling and somehow very valuable but not appreciated way of seeing the world. And so for me, when I say the matriarchs them say, I use it a lot when I'm posting on social media. It's really just to bring this consciousness around, you know, that we have ancient wisdom, we have indigenous stories. I see them as anchors, I see them as footholds, and I see our being in this context and in this day and my work as an opportunity to anchor myself in those traditions and then to see my own gaze, my life experience, my desires as an opportunity to transmute, transform, to offer and share it. So I'm happy that I'm an artist so that I can do this.